Hello and welcome to Curtain and Lights, a movie podcast where we discuss movies directly after watching them. I'm Jannik.
And here's Alex.
And today we're talking about Sita Sings the Blues, a 2008 movie by Nina Paley, and there will be spoilers from here on out. So, Sita Sings the Blues is an animated movie by Nina Paley, and it's about two stories that are kind of played in tandem to one another. One of is a retelling of the Hindu Indian myth of the Ramayana, and the another one is the autobiographical a story of Nina Paley's own breakup story. These two stories are told in four different ways. So there are four different styles that the movie is animated in, and every style has a different type of telling the story. The first style is a very scratchy Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes kind of style that tells the story of Nina Paley's breakup, and the second one is a very casual, laid-back PowerPoint kind of style, where three narrators explain the story of the Ramayana and explain some context behind it and some different interpretations. The third story is kind of like paper cutout animated style that also tells individual dialogue scenes from the Ramayana, and the fourth animation style is a very kind of childish looking very simple animation style that is accompanied by music that tells sort of the thematic implications of the emotional state of Sita, who is the main character of the Ramayana movie. Main concept is that culture is sort of free flowing, and that art is not told in a very isolated way, but that everything is intertextual. So all art is connected to other art and connected to other art, and it explores that way in different styles. For example, the part where the three narrators talk about the Ramayana is not a very straightforward retelling of a story that you would normally expect in a movie, but every one of the narrators has their personal and interpretations of the same story, but they lay it out in different ways, and that's one way how the movie tells you that there isn't one story, but everyone kind of creates their own story while retelling it.
So from my point of view, what I've noticed is the whole Nina Paley story arc has a lot of these real life pictures chopped into it, and I don't know how to describe it any better, but there's that subreddit, that German subreddit called ICL, and it oozes that feeling. It really has that vibe, because it's hard to explain. It has a weird surreal vibe in a way, and it has that. And,
yeah, kind of quote unquote bad editing. It doesn't really pretty in a way, because it looks shambled together.
But in a purposeful way, so it conveys a point across, which actually looks really good. One thing I've written down, the first thing I want to talk about is the hearts at the beginning, and which you can see right after the breakup in Nina Paley's story. Is the heart small side tangent, the breakup scene, that weird psychedelic scene, it's so good. But okay, enough of that. So there's that heart scene at the beginning, and then that psychedelic scene where they show many different styles of drawing a heart. I think there's a schematic drawing of a human heart. There's that weird paper cutouty heart. There's that cartoonish heart, and there are two more or three more. I don't quite recall it right now, but it kind of hints to the different animation styles,
Yeah, and I think also the different animation styles itself, like the fact that this movie has 4 different animation styles, again shows that idea, like I said, with the 3 narrators, that like it kind of shows the same story. It shows like 3 times the same story, and 1 time a different story that is thematically very similar, right? But like it's always kind of the same story, but like told different ways. So that again, like reinforces the idea of like there isn't just like one way to tell the story. Like basically all of human artistic expression in history has been like retelling different stories and like taking different perspectives on like the same kind of themes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, for example, like that, the musical style, like I wrote down, it kind of reminds me of like these mobile game ads you see on YouTube of these dubious games, like, you know. But like it's the commercialized or sensationalized way that like it's not really modern, like because I think like back in ancient times they all probably also told myths by singing them, because that's actually the way how music was created original, because about I think 40,000 years ago humans started telling myths by starting to make it like with a rhythm and so on. So that's both like the modern and the really old way, if you know what I mean. The paper cutout way has like that weird like ancient feel to it, like not super ancient but like somewhere in between. Like it also is more ancient than the modern thing.
I think like the paper cutout style is actually like the paper cutouts are actually like taken from like from Hindu drawings. So this is like the real thing.
The laid back PowerPoint style is the one I actually like most, because it just feels like a bunch of dudes in school, or a bunch of dudes in school having to perform a presentation, right? And but like they all are not really prepared, because they just gotta have to do it, so they might as well just do it sloppily. And then they're just like in front of it and just saying like, oh yeah, right. And then there's this guy and that guy and whatnot, and what you've not seen. And it kind of really is podcasty. Like when Jannik and I watched the movie, we actually quite realized how it actually is kind of ironic that we're making a podcast about a movie that kind of has like that weird podcasty element to it.
Yeah, it kind of talks about like part of the movie as a podcast. And this is also, I just checked because YouTube. We'll get to that later, why that is. But the top comment on this, on the YouTube video, it says the 3 shadows are like people doing a podcast. So it really strikes that vibe of like people like kind of like semi-casually, but still like talking about like thematic structure and stuff like that, and like about different interpretations of art. But it's not like formal. It's not like an academic lecture. It's like really like just like 3 dudes or 2 dudes and a girl like just hanging around and talking about the story.
I think the description that describes this best is like if you ask your parents about help or something, and they try to explain it to you, but they don't quite agree on everything, so they start like having that conversation while still explaining it to you. Or like I said, the presentation in school.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, because like, I would say our podcast doesn't have that vibe yet, because we're still like, at least for my part, I'm like still a bit not uncomfortable, but like still a bit weird, like on camera right now. But I think we'll figure that one out.
Yeah, like a bit like chopped up.
But I think we're gonna figure that one out on while time rolls.
Yeah, and also the very casual style kind of serves to demystify. Like usually myths are like just told like as a very like sacred thing and so on, and this sort of like humanizes these people from the myths. Like it talks about like gods and like half humans, half monkeys and shit like that, but it like relates that to like the personal struggle of the director Nina Paley. And this is why like they also like talk in like a very casual tone, as if it were like happening like right now, or like as if it were like a story like one of their friends like went through, and
I know,
or something like that.
One thing I wrote down is like when they suddenly like the presentation thing it kind of felt like a fourth wall break in a way, because like, you know, like even though it wasn't strictly a fourth wall break, it kind of felt like it. And one thing,
It kind of is, like, sort of, like half broken.
one thing I actually Googled while we were watching the movie is like they were talking about that weird space image about India and Sri Lanka. I actually looked it up. The Adams Bridge
Right.
isn't actually a bridge. It's just a line of islands. There's no bridge there, but they're planning one. Small side tangent. I just wanted to figure that out.
Right. I think according to the myth, there was a bridge between Sri Lanka and
what I
India
understand is like
mainland.
that Sita dropped like jewels and they formed like a bridge, and the remnants of that are like the line of
Yeah.
islands right now, like Adams Bridge. It's called Adams Bridge, right? Yeah, one thing I think is really interesting, like normally movies go on and stories split into two separate stories or they merge, but it's very rarely that you have two completely separate plots that only converge like in the last 5 minutes of the movie, and that's exactly what happened here. Like in my opinion, like how I interpret it is like
Right.
like my interpretation of the movie is that Nina was dealing with her struggle with her breakup, and while doing so she was reading the book about, sorry, what was the myth called again? Thank you.
Ramayana.
She was reading about Ramayana in like her book, and in a way, like she read it out to herself in the narrative voice, like, you know. And the thing she
Right.
actually read
Oh, right.
was like the Ramayana story itself, like the one with the cartoony and the one with the paper cutout one, you know. You get what
Right.
I'm going for?
Yeah, and also like the story themselves are connected. She got like dumped by her boyfriend Dave, like in real life, and Sita got like dumped approximately like at the same point of the movie by
Yeah, exactly.
Rama, right? And like that's like the main connection. Like she like like desperately like clings on to that relationship,
Yeah,
right? And wants to still be with her ex, even though her ex isn't like interested at all. Like as well, like Rama and Dave aren't interested in maintaining
exactly.
that relationship, right? So so that at first like puts them amongst a lot of stress, which like that's for Nina that psychedelic sequence symbolizes, and for Sita the song, like I think it's called like I'm Blue or something, where she like turns blue literally, and
Like where
in
the
the
animals around her
animation.
turn blue too, like when like that weird scene with the frog.
Right, and in the end, Sita basically, like in the Ramayana, basically like says "screw you" and goes back into the womb of the world, right? And and is like happy with it, is like content with not being with Rama, and that gives solace to Nina, because as we see at the end of the book, and she seems happy because like she finished like that chapter of her life, and like the book had like a happy, like resilient ending.
Like I know what you mean. The thing about the movie is that I don't know if you caught on it yet, but I'm just gonna point it out real quick because that's like kind of the reason you picked this movie, I think, is because the music you can hear in the movie was actually like from an artist of the 1920s, I think. And I googled her.
Yeah, Annette Hanshaw.
Thank you.
Annette Hanshaw.
And the copyright holders of that of their music, yeah,
I think it's UMG, but I'm not sure. Is it?
I have no idea how to look. Like I just read it like a minute ago, but I already forget it. Sorry. And as far as I know, like no, I know for certain Nina Parsley. Paley. Nina Paley is an anti-copyright activist. And oh god, it's tricky to think while talking. Oh god.
Should I jump in here? Because so Nina is like a committed anti-copyright activist, and this is also like part of what we talked about earlier. How like all And she like deliberately chooses her movies to be like use a lot of like previous art. For example, like here in this movie, it's mostly like the Ramayana as a story, and Annette Hanshaw's music as like as the soundtrack. But also she uses like a lot of stock images, and like a lot of her animation style isn't like hand drawn by herself, but like used from like collages from like other
Exactly, like,
images, right? So that's kind of like the main conceit of the movie, that like it's like sort of like every artwork is like derivative, and every artwork is like a collage like previous artworks. And that's also like an interpretation I got the final scene where she closes the book, that she was probably like in real life this happened to her, this breakup, but she was also like inspired in real life to the Ramayana. So like she reads the Ramayana, connects to that, and decides to build her artwork based upon this, upon the story structure of the Ramayana, as well as like the lyrics of Annette Hanshaw. Like in all the musical scenes, the lyrics are obviously very abstract because it's a completely different context that they're sung in. And Annette Hanshaw probably didn't even think of the Ramayana. But it fits. Like all the songs like fit to like convey like what is happening right now in the scene in the movie, and that's exactly how it like merges.
The thing about the copyright thing is like I think the main message from at least from what I think is that that no work is like truly original, and I think it really wants to show that just because a work is derivative, it doesn't mean it's like uncreative. Like if you're gonna call this movie uncreative, like get out. Like you have no idea, right? Like I know
Yeah, it's so unique. It's like everyone should watch this movie because it's like very unconventional. Like this movie is like it's sort of unique, but on the other hand, it's kind of not, because it like takes inspiration from other, and it just like embraces that. Like a lot of like artists kind of try to hide that they are inspired by other things because they feel like ashamed of being derivative, right? But this movie like goes like the full 180 and like just fully embraces that it's like completely
like, in a way,
derivative.
Like, I don't want to say it's YouTube poop, obviously, because like it's not. Like it's not. Like that's a fact. But I think it kind of like gets the general idea of YouTube poop, of taking something and turning it into something completely different. Like for example, I'm sure Annette Heinstein, what was her name? Annette Hanshaw. Like I'm pretty sure we can be certain, because she lived, or like she lived 100 years ago. We can be certain like her work was never even remotely intended to be used in a movie about an Indian myth. Like we can rule that possibility like with almost absolute certainty out. But the thing that really makes it good is like they take it and turn it into something completely different, and it shows like, and you know what I mean, like with the YouTube poop analogy, right?
It shows like but it also like shows like that even like two like completely different things, like Annette Hanshaw's music and the Ramayana, they have they harmonize because like they have like the same core, right? Because they talk about like the in the sense, right? And it shows like a really nice juxtaposition, because like on some way it's like you can't get more different, but in another lens it's like it really fits very well. It like it fits exactly. And to see that connection is like an artistic act in itself. Like it's not only like artistic to create, but also like to just see the connection between different art pieces, right?
I think we should go on like the copyright debate like a bit more, because I know you're an expert in it, because you literally hold you literally held a small TED talk about it. So
I did hold a TED talk on it, a TEDx So I am committed copyright abolitionist, and part of what kind of radicalized me on that position were actually like by the director. Not so much the movie itself, because like the movie itself showcases like obviously a good argument for anti-copyright, but like I think art isn't really like that persuasive in a political sense that often. Like usually you just like get out of art what you like feel like getting out of art. There's not like a lot of like movies that really change my position on like on something political, right? But because of this movie, I checked out the talks of Nina Paley, and she talked about basically what we are talking now about, how everything is derivative of something else, and she has like very like good examples. She has like a short film. We haven't seen you haven't seen this, but she has like a short film where it's just like pictures of like different artworks from all around the world, from all eras, right? That are like completely disconnected, so to speak, but they have like a perfect transition. Like one transitions to the other, and you get like from Egyptian paintings to Jesus statues to ancient Indian statues, and so on, and it all like works together, and it's like edited very quickly, so you don't even notice it move, basically, right? It was one thing and suddenly it's like something completely different. But that shows like how all of art is like derivative of each other, and how like the distinction between like copyright is kind of like bullshit.
Though, like, sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay, like even though like
you can say.
I don't know nearly as much about copyright like as you do. Like I know a bit about copyright because I like on my free time I sometimes write a bit of software like Minecraft modifications, like that's stuff I write. So I kind of have to talk about copyright because like licensing, you know, and while doing that, I kind of realized like I would say about me, I'm a copyright abolitionist too. Like I think we should just get rid of it, but like I'm not as passionate about it as you, right? But I think that
yeah, it used to be like a very big thing for me. Like now, I don't like talk about copyright abolition as much because it's kind of like my anti-copyright phase is kind of over. I'm still like anti, right? But for a while, especially because I did like research for my talk, I was really invested in this. So this is, and that's also like the time where I first watched this movie. So it's, and also watched her talks, and also watched some other like YouTube videos. So like that, all that stuff like really stuck to me.
And my point was like, even though like I have to like, since I talk about software, and like I would say, like, sorry for the small side tangent, like I would say no software is original. Like even when I use the very programming language, like I'm using someone else's work. And the same is true for movies. Like no movie or no work can even be possibly original because like even though like I don't like the stance that everything needs to be seen in context. Like we had that discussion on Twitter once. But I think like you can't make an art form without context to something else. Like even the language you're using, it was made over thousands of years, right? Like you can't pick style as like a thing that the public opinion is like on style, for example. Like that's also derivative. Like every like you know.
Right, and also not even just like literally language, but also like the art language. Like every art form language as in like its conventions, right? Like there are literally literary devices, like video game design devices. There are obviously like film techniques that are like cross-cutting, like over the shoulder cam, like zooms and shit like that, right? So like obviously like everything you do in film either like establishes a rule or subverts a rule. It always has to like be seen like in context to what was
like,
done
the only
before,
way to
right?
absolutely do something original, like for example, would to even tell the movie, to even tell the story. No, not even the story. To even tell the thing you want to tell, you couldn't even use movies. You couldn't use picture. You couldn't use books because all these things are derivative work. Like someone billions, thousands of years ago came up with the idea. Let's write stuff down. Like it's even the very act of writing down the story is like derivative.
Right.
And the thing that makes me kind of mad in a way is like that that people don't see this, you know?
Right. A really good YouTuber called
Well, who? You cut out.
who's
Sorry.
also Patricia Taxon, who's also a copyright abolitionist, and she did some videos that also like make me see a lot of stuff about copyright abolition. But that's not even trying to talk about. In her most recent video, she talked about like objective art criticism. Like she kind of countered arguments to like there's a lot of people who say that you can like critique art objectively,
like,
right?
Is like that on Star Wars. Like Star Wars 8 was an objectively bad movie. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's not even my point. But like one of the things that that she said in the most recent video is she did like she said something about like Newton's third law of art, and it says every artistic convention that is established definitely creates a counter convention that subverts that rule.
Point, yeah.
Like so it's kind of like Newton's third law of physics, right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So that's like kind of the same for artistic conventions. So even if you like don't follow the rules of like art, you subvert the rules of art. So it's still like based on the context of the art that came before you.
Like not
right?
Purposely not following a rule in a way is following the rule. Like I don't know if you have any idea about programming, but the thing you would express this is to literally just invert what you're about to do, and that is in a way strictly following the rule but just not doing it, you know? Like it's just the same thing. Like it's as derivative, if not even more derivative than actually just following that rule. But I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because it's absolutely not. And the thing that annoys me most is that when people try to differentiate between what is original content and what is derivative work, like even if, like let's say like even if I were to take our podcast as a third party right now and just redistribute it, right? Like even though that person is not adding anything of themselves, like there is it's impossible to draw a line between what is derivative work and what's literal copy. So that's another point for abolishing copyright, because you can't just say, all right, this is like just a copy and this is a derivative work, you know?
Right. There's exactly by the same YouTuber. There's a about like Lord of the Rings. Like, what if you just like write a story that is about people trying to destroy like a very powerful weapon, and it's about the journey to that. That's like very vaguely like the Lord of the Rings, right? But no one would call that like copyright infringement. But what if you like tweak it a little bit, that like the people that do and that try to destroy it are like fantasy creatures and are like stacked against orcs? Then it's like slightly more similar to Lord of the Rings, but still not exactly. And there's like no like a carbon copy of Lord of the Rings, or just an abstract story that follows like the same kind of story beat. And that's, again, if we bring it back to the movie, that's kind of like the Ramayana and Nina's autobiography. Like it has the same story beats, but like at different levels of abstractions. Like one of them is literally like the story, one of them is like a musical based on the story, one of them is like three different people talking about interpretations, and one of them is like kind of the same story but like with different characters and in a different setting.
One thing we unfortunately need to get out of the way real quick is that although Nina Paley has really good work about copyright, we need to point out that unfortunately she's a TERF.
Yeah, yeah, it really sucks, and thankfully it doesn't really come across.
Yeah.
Like her movies don't focus on that at all, but it comes across on her Twitter account, and shit sucks, man. Because like
she's such a good anti-copyright activist. Like I really support her in that way, but well, trans rights are human rights, so unfortunately, we really do not agree with being TERF. So
yeah, we definitely want to like differentiate. Like we want to like disavow her on that. Like we don't just because we like agree on her in some things, we don't like agree on her views on trans people and
especially since I'm, for example, LGBT. So I kind of like I'm not really like I'm not trans, but I'm still kind of affected by it, and kind of makes me mad when people like are transphobic, like LGB drop the T like that. So yeah.
We must be definitely like in solidarity with our trans sisters and brothers. Okay, moving on to, so this was like very abstract, like philosophy about copyright. The next part is still about copyright, but like more about like the literal like act of her about like the relationship between her and the music used. So she talks about this also in her talk, that she felt like a need that the music by Annette Hanshaw like has to be in the movie because it's like it made artistic sense to her, and that's like the art piece she wanted to create, right? And but it was owned by a music company. I think it's UMG, Universal Music. I'm not sure about that, so don't sue me, UMG, if I said that wrong. But what was the point I was trying to make? Yeah, so Annette Hanshaw is basically run into obscurity. She is not like nearly as famous as like some contemporaries like Louis Armstrong or. You're more educated on this music. What are some other like people of like the 20s and 30s that are more famous than Annette Hanshaw?
Blues, but like an early, like from the 1920s and 1930s is like Albert Ammons. Early jazz musicians, like it's not really early, but like Dave Brubeck, like really.
That's a bit later, though, right? That's 50.
You could say Albert Ammons is an early blueser. You could say Kansas Joe is a blueser. Sorry, what was his name? Kansas Joe? Kansas Joe? I have to look it up. Like, you know the song When the Levee Breaks from Led Zeppelin? Yeah, like that's a cover song of a song by Kansas Joe.
Oh, okay. So anyways, these people...
Yet again.
Exactly, and these are obviously more famous, and like Annette Hanshaw is basically run into obscurity, and her records weren't even being produced anymore. So there was like no real reason to even own the copyright, because it's not like they made like a lot of money. It was just like to gatekeep that in the case someone actually wants to use her music, they have to pay, which is like it. Like all these people that defend copyright on the basis, oh, it protects the artist and it protects creativity. It doesn't make any sense, because like if you if like the art is just like shut off from the artistic community, like nobody can listen to it really because the records aren't produced. Nobody can use it, definitely. Like it doesn't make any sense that you would say like this protects the artistic integrity.
Like, the argument that copyright protects creativity, like that's just, I would say that's just flat out factually wrong, because it forbids works that are similar, like too similar beyond a certain not even definable threshold, you know? Like I can kind of see the argument with it protects the artist because like you're forced into paying money. Like yeah, I know in theory at least, like in practice, like it's just going to be label companies making money. But like in theory it would be, but it's not happening in practice, so we can dismiss that
Right.
point, you know?
And also, like, Annette Hanshaw is dead, so she's like not making money because people are stealing her copyright.
Like, the only ones who are making money is some company that they didn't even create the work. Like they're saying they're going to protect creativity by gatekeeping creativity. Like I'm going to need like a few shots of whiskey to figure this one out, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So you said it was like negotiated down. It was originally how much did they want originally from her?
And she negotiated it down to 50K.
Yeah, that's still a lot for like an independent, like not mainstream movie. Like
yeah.
And yeah, but in a way, she is not repeating the mistakes like the people who were holding the copyright for, because her movies are Creative Commons. They can be posted on YouTube. They can be seen by everyone. That's why we are watching it on YouTube, and we're linking it down below in the description, so you can watch it too.
It's how's it called? It's CC0 is the license, meaning basically CC0 just means it's public domain. Like you can do whatever you want with it. You could even sell it if you wish. Like I could print copies of this and make money off of it. That's how it works. Like if I would, like I'm not gonna
exactly.
Going to, but I could.
And it says like except for certain songs, since required by the respective copyright holder. So like obviously she can't like you can't like reuse the songs that she paid money for, because like it's not in her control, because it's not her intellectual property. But that's the problem with intellectual property, that it allows companies to gatekeep certain parts of certain art pieces and completely gatekeep some other art pieces, like the discography of Annette Hanshaw. And I think it's really good that she used Annette Hanshaw in this movie, because like the music is very good. I would have never heard of Annette Hanshaw otherwise, and a lot of people else also wouldn't have, because like she isn't like Annette Hanshaw isn't like Louis Armstrong or like Louis Armstrong, like you know him either way, right? But like it doesn't matter to Annette Hanshaw either. But for like the art of Annette Hanshaw, it really helped that she was featured in this movie so prominently, because this is like not a very big movie, but it has like a sort of like small cult following. It has 1.6 million views on YouTube. So now a lot more people know that music and listen to that music. So it in a way, it also, the movie serves as like a kind of like a historic document and preservation, like almost lost art.
Yeah, I would say it's like kind of a, like, I know it's like stereotypical leftist, but I think it's like good we kind of show in a way that we're against like copyright, like, or like purposely, like, I don't want to say purposely like streaming music, but I think like we should at least show that we don't agree with the copyright system as it is right now. Like, for example, like intellectual property, like in my opinion, is like complete bullcrap. Like, you can't own a thought. Like even if you could, like, I think it would be just like arrogant. Like, in my opinion, it's really arrogant to assume you're the first person in 200,000 years to have that very thought. Like, that's just arrogant. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see that all the time with like the actions that go around like these days, with like some bands like suing some other band or musician about like a certain like scale or a certain like chord progression and like for example, like Adam Neely,
thank you for pointing out.
like he like shows and like multiple videos that like these, even if like we take it as a fact that you can own a chord progression, like even these people who are suing weren't the first people to come up with that chord progression. Like there's only like a certain amount of like thoughts you can have, and there's like bound to be repetitions across like cultures, across different artists. There, because we all like share the same human experience, so there's like bound to be commonalities between like artistic thought, and that's that again ties it back to like the thought we had in the beginning about how copyright how Nina Paley and how those same how like the movie itself took inspiration from the Ramayana, and it has that connection, even though Annette Hanshaw and whoever wrote the Ramayana, if there even is like a single writer of the Ramayana, they obviously didn't like collaborate, but they still have like similar thoughts that had like similar like that were expressed in different ways, but had like similar core ideas, and that's the same thing as what we were talking about right now.
One other thing, like especially like with the music, like you just said about Adam Neely, like I know you just started playing the guitar. Like for example, I play the I play the piano, and I know like there's just like a stencil. Like for example, I play blues on the piano, and like it's just in a way like you can't even say, like even the most hardcore copyright like protectionist people were like protective people of copyright are gonna say like are not gonna say anything about blues music, for example. Like I'm just gonna talk about blues music because the movie's Sita Sings the Blues. Like for example, when I play blues on the piano, like there's the 12-bar blues scheme. Like it's been around for over a century right now, and nobody would even remotely come up with the idea of suing me because I'm gonna play that. You know?
Yeah, and also it's like very arbitrary. Like you can like copyright a melody and but why can't you copyright like the act of playing a guitar? That's like an artistic, right? The literal sound that a guitar makes, like it's obviously like silly to like copyright like playing the act of playing guitar, but it's kind of the same thought process. Like if you can copyright like certain melodies, you're able to certain instruments or certain
one thing
sounds,
that really
right?
Annoys me, like coming back to the blues thing, is like why would in pop music, like in that one Adam Neely video, or like not one or two, or like many Adam Neely videos are like about being sued because like the chord progressions or something. Like why is that a crime? Because if there is a different underlying harmony, but it's not a crime if I improvise a boogie over on the piano, even though the chord progression that I use is a 1-4-5, which, like I said, is around like for a century. Like, why would you even?
Right.
Where's the difference? Like, why is one a crime and one other thing perfectly normal? You know, like it's not even consequent. Like, they're not even like strict with their own rules. So I think it's just bullshit at this point, for lack of a better term.
And we all know that that like sure, there are like a lot of people who like think copyright is good, but most of them probably haven't like thought about copyright that much, but just think like, because copyright is like very normalized, and it's not really often, right? Like for example, workplace democracy, that's like like politically comes up like fairly often, right? Or like federalism or stuff like that. But copyright is like a very niche subject. So most people just like assume, like they haven't thought about it very much. They just assume it's already the way it is, and like they just think that's like normal, right? But we have to realize that current copyright laws only like they first like started existing like only like a few years after the United States were established and were founded. And before that, art was flourishing. like nobody can tell me that like during the Baroque era, during the Renaissance, art was not like art was in decline, like artistic integrity
absolutely not
there, and also like the way copyright laws are now is only because like companies like Disney, but it's like or UMG, but especially Disney, lobby it to be more strict, to go on for even longer. For example, the Annette Hanshaw thing, like she died in the 20s. There's no reason to protect her copyright. I don't think she died in the 20s, but she died like a few decades ago. There's no reason to protect her copyright like until the, and still they do, because it's not about protecting the artist. It's about having control over art, and the control lies with the corporations, not with the artists.
Exactly, like you said, like it's a niche thing. Like you said that, like the only real thing where I can think of where people actually thought about copyright was like about a year ago. Like I think it's actually today on the, like a year ago. I think that it was like the big Article 13 or 13 demonstration, like they did on.
That was a big discussion,
like,
right?
People would go out of their way and say copyright is good, but we can't have filters because it's not discernible to a filter what's like derivative work and what's fair use. Like, if you even think about this, like, why don't you just go for the full 9 yards and say, yeah, let's just abolish it? Like, when we were in the demonstration, like, I started like people were saying reform copyright, and I just said, I just shouted like abolish copyright, and I just got some bad looks, like what's that crazy guy doing over there? Even though it's just like the same general idea, just applied the whole way, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's probably because like copyright has been around for like everyone who's alive right now their entire lifetime, right? It hasn't been around forever, but it has been around for
like the 1800s.
So it's like we said, like not a discussion that comes up often, like in normal public discourse. So it probably like takes a while until people like actually like ask themselves, what purpose is copyright even serving? Because it's like so normalized in our like day, like oh yeah, like obviously you can't like steal something from an artist because they did it, they should get credit. Like that's like a natural thought, but so it's kind of like the ideological like normalization of copyright is like so deep within the people that it takes a lot of like untangling for them to actually like ask themselves, do we even need it? Is it even like serving the artists? Is it even like, does it even make like philosophical sense to protect thoughts in that way?
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess that's it for me, or what I wanted to say about this movie. Do you still have anything to say?
Let me just check my notes. Yeah, I think I'm all the way through except for one thing. Like at the very beginning of the movie, like it says your name here and your money, right? And I just want to point out that's like a nice detail too, and that's about everything else.
Yeah, it's a nice detail because it's like community funded and not by some big donor. It's like the Bernie Sanders campaign of movies.
Yeah, but that's everything I wanted to say, and I think you too, right?
All right, then we'll see each other
all right.
in the outro.
To the summary of the film, I think it was really good. Like I quite enjoyed it. Like it's the first time I've even seen anything remote. Well, that's not true. I've seen Fantastic Planet with you, and it's kind of like it's not really similar, but it's like you know what I mean. It's also like experimental in a way, right? But I think this is like the first like the second like experimental animated movie that I saw, and I actually really enjoyed it. And yeah, I like the copyright points. Like we just talked about that a lot, and I would give it a 10 out of 10, but unfortunately the director is a turf, so I'm just going to give it a 9 out of 10. All
right, so yeah, I also really like this movie. it's so charming in a way. Obviously, a lot why I like this movie is because like I watched it during that like very strong anti-copyright phase, and it really like inspired me to go watch Nina Paley's talks, which we might also link in the description if you want. And but also like just the style of the movie is like so charming, and like every iteration, like the story of Nina, the shadow narrators, the Ramayana cutout story, and also like the musical section. It just like it is a like very cool like movie to watch, right? And especially like that scene after the intermission of Nina's breakdown, where it's like a really like psychedelic collage, and the music is good, the concepts are good, everything is good. I think I'm also gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think I don't know what really is missing like for like the perfect 10 out of 10, but it's just like it's not that it does anything like particularly wrong, but I think it does it just doesn't like fulfill my artistically as like 10 out of 10 movies would, but it's like a very high 9 and it's pretty close to a 10. So do you know what movie we might watch next week?
Next week, I think we're gonna watch The Odd Couple. I don't think like it's. I think that's gonna be the first movie that's actually gonna be very apolitical, because it's a comedy movie from I think 1968, and I think we're gonna watch that because even though it's not political, it's actually a really good movie. That's actually really great and fun to enjoy and watching. You know.
All right, I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.